It has often been said that war is the most dramatic of human endeavors. And of the millions of people who served throughout the globe in the Second World War, there are countless stories of those who went above and beyond to serve their country, to protect their comrades, and to do their part to try to bring an end to the most destructive war in human history. And among those stories is the story of Richard Ira Bong, a U.S. Army fighter pilot in the Pacific who was so successful that he became America's ace of aces. The story of the top fighter ace of the U.S. Army Air Force deserves to be remembered. Richard Ira Bong was born September 24th, 1920, in Superior, Wisconsin. The oldest of 9 children, born to Carl Bong, a Swedish immigrant, and American Dora Bryce. He was known as Dick and grew up on a farm near the small town of Poplar, Wisconsin. He had an interest in planes from a young age and saw airmail planes fly over the farm when President Calvin Coolidge was at his summer White House in Superior. He recalled that the mail plane flew right over our house, and I knew that I wanted to be a pilot. He attended the Superior State Teachers College beginning in 1938, where he enrolled in the Civilian Pilot Training Program, started just that year to train pilots, both for civilian roles and the possibility of war. On May 29, 1941, Bong enlisted in the Army Air Corps Aviation Cadet Program. The cadet program had been accelerated in 1940, reducing training time to meet a potential demand for pilots. The U.S. Army Air Corps tripled between July of 1940 and July of 41, from 51,000 to over 152,000 men. Bong was one of the many trained in this period. He was trained at Tulare and Gardner Fields in California, as well as Luke Fields in Arizona. He trained in a BT-13 and later in an AT-6 Texan. His gunnery instructor in Arizona was Barry Goldwater, later a senator and presidential nominee, who said that Bong was a very bright student and was already showing his talent as a pilot. Bong earned his pilot wings and was commissioned a second lieutenant in the Army Air Force Reserves on January 9, 1942, just a month after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Bong was kept at Luke Field for several months, where he worked as a gunnery instructor until he was transferred to Hamilton Field near San Francisco, where he trained to fly the Lockheed P38 Lightning. The P38 was designed in response to a 1937 specification for the U.S. Army Air Corps seeking a twin-engined interceptor having the tactical mission of interception and attack of hostile aircraft at high altitude. The P-38 was the first American military plane to reach speeds over 400 miles per hour in level flight. It would become a staple of American forces, especially in the Pacific, where it was the primary long-range fighter for most of the war. According to General George Kenney, the P-38 had twice the range of any other fighter in the Air Force.
These are lethal weapons. Their one purpose, the sole reason for their existence, is to knock enemy planes out of the sky.
A number of stories have come out of Bong's time at Hamilton. On June 12, 1942, he was cited for buzzing the house of a pilot who had just gotten married. The same day, several other pilots were cited for flying a loop around the center span of the Golden Gate Bridge. Bong has often been accused of looping the bridge, though he always denied it later. However, he did apparently fly low down Market Street in San Francisco, so low that he knocked some laundry off a line and waved at people in the lower floors of some of the buildings. General George Kenney, commander of the 4th Air Force, remembers dressing Bong down for the stunt, saying, "Now, I don't need to tell you again how serious this matter is. If you didn't want to fly down Market Street, I wouldn't want you in my Air Force, but you're not to do it anymore. And I mean what I say." Kenney made Bong help the woman with her laundry. Douglas MacArthur, Supreme Allied Commander of the Southwest Pacific Area, chose Kenney over General James Doolittle to command the 5th Air Force, who were flying out of Australia. Bong was handpicked by Kenney as one of 50 P-38 pilots brought to Australia in September. Bong was assigned to the 9th Fighter Squadron of the 49th Fighter Group, nicknamed the Flying Knights. Although he served briefly with the 35th Fighter Group in New Guinea, waiting for P-38s to be delivered to the 49th. The situation at the time was serious, with American units low on supplies, spare parts, and planes. "We never seemed to have more than 2 or 3 days' supply of gasoline, ammunition, and bombs on hand," General Kenney remembered. In a P-38, he and several others engaged a larger force of Japanese planes near Buna, New Guinea on December 27, 1942. Bong scored his first aerial victory here, shooting down 2 Japanese planes himself. He was awarded the Silver Star for the action. On January 7th, his squadron attacked a convoy bringing reinforcements to New Guinea, and he shot down 2 more planes. The very next day, he was escorting a bomber formation when he and 7 accompanying pilots attacked approximately 20 enemy fighters. The citation for his Distinguished Flying Cross said that Lieutenant Bong shot down an enemy aircraft with a long burst at a distance of 200 yards. A difficult shot, and already his 5th confirmed kill. Lieutenant Dick Bong had become a fighter ace not 2 weeks after his first engagement. Meanwhile, actions in the Southwest Pacific Theater were continuing at speed as the Allies took the initiative and went on the offensive. By February 9th, the last Japanese had withdrawn from Guadalcanal, and Allied troops were engaging in the arduous campaign to retake New Guinea. Bong participated in the Battle of the Bismarck Sea, where American planes attacked transports and destroyers carrying nearly 7,000 reinforcements to New Guinea. He shot down a Mitsubishi A6M-0, known as a formidable fighter aircraft, in the combat, and 8 transports were destroyed in a significant defeat for the Japanese and a major propaganda victory for the Army Air Force.
Said General MacArthur, "We have achieved a victory of such completeness as to assume the proportions of a major disaster to the enemy."
By April, he shot down 5 more planes, becoming a double ace, and was promoted to first lieutenant. On July 26, leading a flight of 10 P-38s over New Guinea, he spotted a formation of 20 Japanese planes. He led 3 attacks on the formation, shooting down 2 of the aircraft himself. When 15 more Japanese planes arrived, Bong, disregarding the greatly superior numbers of the enemy, attacked the new planes, taking down another 2 himself. In all, outnumbered 3-1, Bong's team shot down 11 planes without a loss, Bong himself taking 4. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for the action. First Lieutenant Bong's unquestionable valor in aerial combat is in keeping with the highest traditions of the military service, the citation reads. In August, he was promoted again to captain. An engagement later that year nearly cost him his life. According to General Kinney, Bong saw a Japanese fighter chasing down an injured P-38, which was flying towards a nearby cloud bank for cover. Bong turned off one of his engines and drew the attention of the enemy. Once the other plane was clear, he flipped his engine back on and outraced the Japanese pilot back to base. Unfortunately, on his return, he noticed that the plane was damaged worse than he thought. Half of his tail was gone, and as he prepared to land, he found that his ailerons were also damaged. When he finally touched down, he discovered that he had no brakes, and one of the wheels was punctured. He ended up in a ditch, alive, but his plane was a total loss. The plate shield behind his head was pitted with dents, and the plane had 50 bullet holes in it. Both fuel tanks were punctured, but a self-sealing rubber system had kept them from leaking. In another engagement, he was circling above the jungle where a pilot had ditched. Below him, soldiers had gotten in a rubber boat to cross a lake to get to the pilot, and Bong sighted a crocodile following them. He dipped low to the water, sighted, and blasted the encroaching crocodile with a 20mm round. Captain Bong was granted leave stateside when he reached 21 confirmed kills. He was able to spend the holidays in 1943 at home in Wisconsin, where he met Marjorie Vattendahl and began dating her. He also participated in a ship launching, where the Welderettes named him their #1 pinup boy. When asked how he was so good at what he did, he modestly answered, "Oh, I'm just lucky, I guess. A lot of Japanese happen to get in my way. I keep shooting plenty of lead, and finally some of them get hit." When he returned to the Pacific in 1944, he christened his plane Marge, and had his girl's face painted on the nose. He was reassigned to the 5th Air Force HQ, but allowed to freelance. During this period, 2 of the other aces in the region were lost in combat. Neil Kirby, with 22 victories, was shot down on March 5th. Thomas Lynch, a lieutenant colonel with 20 kills, was flying with Captain Bong on March 8th when they spotted and strafed a barge. On a second pass, Lynch was hit, and his plane exploded before he could ditch. Lynch bailed out, but he was too close to the ground for his parachute to deploy. Bong stayed in the area long enough to confirm that he hadn't survived. The deaths of the other aces made an impact back in the States. Kenny received a radio communication that expressed concern over the high loss rate of pilots who shot down many enemy aircraft. A case in point is Captain Bong. The radio wondered if the captain shouldn't be sent home for a time for his own safety. Bong had, on April 12th, been credited with 3 more victories, which brought his total to 28, officially beating Eddie Rickenbacker's 26 during World War I. Kenny made Bong a major and took the chance to send him home. Rickenbacker and Kenny had earlier promised cases of scotch to whoever beat Rickenbacker's record first, and both of them sent along a case. For 3 months, he was on leave in the United States, doing publicity tours, urging civilians to buy bonds and generally supporting the war effort. In addition to his tours, he had requested to take a gunnery course. By his own admission, he wasn't a good shot and got his victories by flying as close as possible to his target so he'd be sure to hit them. When he got back, he was put in charge of gunnery training and told not to engage except in self-defense. On October 10th, he accompanied his trainees, shot down 2 more planes, only in self-defense, of course. Bong, still officially gunnery instructor and not required to fly combat missions, continued to find ways to do so. And between October 10th and November 15th, he engaged in unusually hazardous sorties and shot down 8 more planes. He was recommended for and received the Medal of Honor for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty. MacArthur gave it to him personally with a short congratulations. Major Richard Ira Bong, who has ruled the air from New Guinea to the Philippines, I now induct you into the society of the bravest of the brave, the wearers of the Congressional Medal of Honor of the United States. By December 17th, Bong got his 40th victory, and Kenney ordered him home. In fact, Kenney was convinced that Bong actually had many more victories than that. Stories abounded that he had given away kills to wingmen when he had really done the shooting. He had flown 146 combat missions and had 400 hours of combat time. Richard Ira Bong married Marjorie Vattendahl on February 10th, 1945. He participated in war bond drives and PR activities, and having already given so much in the service of his country, took on one of the most dangerous jobs a nation could ask, becoming a test pilot for Lockheed, testing their new P-80 Shooting Star jet. The P-80 testing program had proven extremely dangerous, and veteran test pilot Milo Burcham had died in a crash of the 3rd production prototype in October 1944. On August 6, 1945, Bong took off in his 12th flight in the plane. A Lockheed service mechanic later reported, "We knew something was wrong when we saw a puff of black smoke come out just as he leveled off in flight. Within 4 minutes of takeoff, the plane exploded just some 50 feet off the ground over North Hollywood. A witness quoted in the Los Angeles Times saw Bong eject from the plane, but he was too low for his parachute to open, and he was caught in the explosion." America's ace of aces died the same day the first atomic bomb was detonated over Hiroshima. His death shared front-page news with the first reports. General Kenney wrote that we not only loved him, we boasted about him. We were proud of him. That's why we each of us got a lump in our throats when we read that telegram about his death. His country and the Air Force must never forget their #1 fighter pilot. Eddie Rickenbacker said that Bong made his final contribution to aviation in the dangerous role of test pilot of an untried experimental plane, a deed that places him among the stout-hearted pioneers who gave their lives in the conquest of sky and space. In his 2020 book, Race of Aces, veteran combat correspondent Dick Bruning notes that of among American fighter pilots in the Second World War, only 5% became aces. And yet those 5% accounted for half of all enemy aircraft claimed in air-to-air combat. And simply put, that means that a huge burden was placed on the shoulders of a very few. A burden we can barely even comprehend today. When Major Dick Bong died, he was just 24 years old. In his brief life, he became one of the most decorated pilots in American history, having earned the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, 7 Distinguished Flying Crosses, and 15 Air Medals. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the History Guy, short snippets of forgotten history. And if you did enjoy, feed the algorithm by making a comment or clicking that like button. If you have suggestions for future episodes, please send those to our suggestions email box. Check out our webpage at thehistoryguy.net. And of course, we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can book a special message from the History Guy on Cameo and check out our merchandise at teespring.com. And if you'd like more episodes of Forgotten History, all you need to do is subscribe.